Today we are in Barcelona for the very first time, and we're excited to share with you day one of our trip.
It was a great way to end our cruise and start the next phase.
Hi, I'm Crystal.
And I'm Marshall.
And welcome back to the channel. If you're new here or if you just haven't subscribed yet, please do. And don't forget to give this video a like if you like it. Let's dig in.
Let's start.
So you may remember we were on a transatlantic cruise from Miami over to Barcelona. And so this was our very last stop. So it was time to disembark on Explorer of the Seas.
So we had to go through customs, and there's something about that customs line. Always we find people that we wish we would have met the first day. So we had some great conversations, but we had to bid farewell to them very fast.
Yeah. And then we took a taxi to our Airbnb. We had rented an apartment there, and we had gotten off the ship a little bit early, so the apartment wasn't quite ready because it wasn't check-in time yet.
They let us put our luggage there, which was super nice, and we just needed to walk around and explore a little bit before we could actually check in at, I think, 1 o'clock.
Yeah. So we did do a full Airbnb tour. If you haven't seen it yet, we'll link it in the description below. So we basically went kind of across the street almost, and we found this amazing park. It's called Ciutadella Park.
It was a great introduction to Barcelona.
Yeah, and you know, when we walked around and saw this whole area, we knew this was going to be an amazing city. Like, there was just so much packed into that park. You could rent a little boat and go around the pond there. There was also on the other end of the park an entire zoo and at least one museum.
Yes, there were a lot of historical buildings, and I think one was turned into a museum. So you can see it's just a relaxed area. It's just so enjoyable. People on bicycles, walking around, families, couples, single people enjoying the view. It was just a great introduction, as you said, to Barcelona.
And then there were eateries in there. So we were like, maybe we could come back here for lunch or dinner. I don't know. We didn't know what to do. We were just there to have an experience, and did we ever?
Right.
So then I thought I saw out of the corner of my eye as we panned around an elephant, but then
I wasn't
sure.
It wasn't alive. We knew that. It was just this very large, and I mean large, statue of an elephant.
Yeah. So it's like the exact life size of the elephant Jumbo, apparently. So we took some pictures there, but we actually did have plans for this day.
Yes. So we have in the past used Rick Steves' walking tours, and we found out that he had a Barcelona tour. So we checked in, dropped our luggage off, and headed right out to the tour. And we had to walk there, and on our way to the start was the Arc de Triomf of Barcelona. And it was fantastic. And it was a little prelude to all the walkable areas of the city.
Yeah, so many like photo spots. There was like the architecture in Barcelona is, I would say, unmatched.
Yeah.
I mean, you'll see a lot of works by Gaudi and other very famous and very talented designers and architects. So just absolutely amazing.
As we're walking up to the Arc, check out the lampposts are just a work of art.
Yeah. And they were all along that street leading up to the Arc. Yeah. Now, we hadn't even started the tour yet. This was on the way to the very first spot on the Rick Steves tour. And we had also, you had downloaded the Google Maps so that we could use it offline.
That's a must for any place, whether it's just a day excursion or we're there for a few days. I try to download those maps.
Yeah, very helpful.
Yeah. Well, here we are at the Arc going underneath it, and I think you told me that this is a very special arc because most of these arcs in Europe are over a military battle, a war that was won, and this was really a peacetime arc that they just want to do a triumph of their community.
It was actually built in preparation of the World's Fair.
Oh. I knew you knew the story.
Yeah, I looked it up. So we started walking toward where the first spot was going to be on the Rick Steves tour. And we just wanted to show you sort of the flavor of what we're passing on the streets. So there are tons of eateries, little cafes, coffee shops with outdoor seating. There's this amazing bakery where we actually stopped and we shared a chocolate croissant.
Yes.
And just lots of really different shops, restaurants, stores. There's such interesting things that we don't necessarily see in the US. For example, this shop.
Hey, let's get a leg of beef, lamb, pork. It's whatever. They had hoofs all around.
Yeah, hoofs for everyone. Yeah, he was shaving, I think it was pork, the one that he was cutting actively while we were there. But
something you don't see in American cities.
no, yeah. So yeah, very interesting. Of course, we didn't buy one. We don't eat meat, but yeah, it was interesting.
Well, what I liked about this pre-walk until we got to the tour is you're going to see that this is a very touristy city, and rightfully so. But this street definitely had more of a vibe of just a in-town with apartment buildings and local stores.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of a nice balance to a lot of the touristy areas that we did wind up seeing today.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So we saw this store, which my niece just loves this whole kind of vibe. So I went in there to see if there was something I could find for her birthday that she might like. That wouldn't take up a lot of room in our suitcases. Right. So I was successful in that attempt. So yeah.
Even though this is just an average street with apartments, you can see the detail and the architectural, nuances of these, pretty much every building in Barcelona.
Mm-hmm. True. So now we actually begin the Rick Steves tour. And this tour stopped at 22 places. The very first spot was Placa de Catalunya, which was actually closed due to construction, or they were doing a setup for something, I don't know. So we actually just walked around the area to begin the tour.
I have to say that I've learned a lot about Barcelona and the Catalonia area and how it's gone from being independent to part of Spain to obviously in wars being taken over with Napoleon and World War II. It's a fascinating history, and obviously with this name, this is really considered the center of this area's independence, even from Spain. Mm-hmm. And in fact, this statue, or the steps or reverse steps, is really a rallying point for local independence, even in the recent decade or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they even speak a different language than Spanish. Mm-hmm. So, I can see the argument for them being their own country. So then the next stop was this street called the Rambla, which means river. So you'll see the tile work is kind of in waves to represent a river.
I mean, it's hard even if you squint, but you can just picture centuries ago that you had obviously shops and stores or buildings, but this was a central river through the town at one point. And now it's mostly a pedestrian walkway, a little bit of a street, but they've given it over to people, which is wonderful.
Then there's this famous fountain here on the right where people would get their water, and the lore around that fountain is that if you drink the water from there, you'll fall in love with Barcelona and you'll always return there.
The good news is you can fall in love with Barcelona without drinking the water. So that's the good news.
That's true, we did.
Yes.
So then we walked on a little bit further, and then the tour took us to the left, where there was a street that had a very interesting building.
And as we're walking to that building, I will tell you that the tour does a great job, but you still have some questions about exactly where to turn. So if you make a slightly wrong turn and double back, you're not alone. So it happened to us a few times.
Yeah, because the street signs are like part of the building, like a plaque on the building, so you just have to know what to look for. And not everything was labeled.
Correct. Yeah.
So here's the building, the Four Cats restaurant, which is very famous for the artists who historically come to visit here, including Pablo Picasso. And who were the others who?
I think Picasso was the leader and made this place, I don't want to say famous, but more famous. And people still, whether it's artists, musicians, and diners, still come here every day, every week to just enjoy the atmosphere and the history.
Now, we will link websites for all of these spots, but you'll see on the site talking about the Four Cats restaurant that every review that I read was that the waitstaff are a little rude.
Well, maybe it's just traditional from the 16th century or whatever.
Could be, just saying. So then we walk down this street. This is a very expensive retail area. So we did pause the tour, which is the great thing about doing a tour on your own, an audio tour. You could just hit pause and take a little break. You could eat if you wanted to, or go shopping, which is what we did. We went into Zara.
Yeah, we have a little bit of a joke that I shop for Euromarshal. So when we were in England once, I got some clothing and I was like, let's get clothing here.
Yeah.
And we had some fun.
Yeah, it was fun. So then we restarted the tour and we went to Plaza Nova, which is part of, now we're beginning to enter some of the other like much older parts, including this section that shows the old part of the old wall with the arch from Roman times.
Absolutely. There are some Roman relics interspersed with the city even today. Not only the relics from Rome, but a little bit more recent, but still centuries old. It was a walled city, so in that area you could see some of the walls right there.
Mm-hmm. So at this point we're getting closer to the cathedral the Barcelona Cathedral. And along the way, this is the spot where, what is it called? The Archbishop?
The Archbishop,
the courtyard for the Archbishop. So this is that area. So we went in and visited that.
Yes. So nowadays it's the Historical Society. So there's some information and you can go in and speak to someone about other places to go to, but you can still see the architecture and the art from when it was the Archbishop's place.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful tile work too, all up the stairs.
Being on top of the courtyard, you can really look at the architecture and you can see the church where we're heading, and it all really just unfolded into this feeling of just centuries old back in the time.
So here we are at the Barcelona Cathedral. We did not have tickets to go inside, so we did not do that, but we will link the website below so you can look at those tickets and that type of information if you're interested. But look at this architecture.
So now walking on the side of the church, continuing the tour, you'll come to the Martyrs of Independence Monument. And again, that has a really deep story.
Mm-hmm. Which I think Rick Steves does a pretty good job explaining all of it, because he says, now take 3 steps to the left, and he'll like explain things, and then a few steps to the right and explain what we're seeing there.
I mean, again, it focuses on this balance between independence and being a part of Spain. And in this case, there were people who died in the name of the independent state.
Now we're heading to Saint Philippe, the square around there, which is another church area, and marks sort of the beginning of the Jewish Quarter, which one of the main features of this area, unfortunately, is the fact that it was bombed. You can see at the base of the building the imprints of the shrapnel from that bombing.
So what happened, from what I remember, is that the children died in that courtyard, and they didn't want to lose that memory and that feeling, which is why they left all that shrapnel marks in the walls to in a way honor what happened there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's still a school to this day.
There were kids playing.
Yeah. So now we go deeper into the Jewish Quarter. And this was interesting because you're down this very narrow street, and they said, look, Rick Steves' tour said, look for door number 5, which was the site of the original synagogue, which was sort of down underneath. So we finally were able to locate door number 5.
Yeah, and it wasn't just us. The location of the synagogue had disappeared for hundreds of years, and it took just a lot of going through the records and history for people to realize that it was this location. Onward we go through, and they call this whole area, it's the Jewish Quarter, is part of this larger Gothic Quarter area, and this, we just continue to other places.
Including Bishop's Bridge, which is quite famous for the lore around this. So the designer and architect wanted to tear down all of the newer buildings and go with this neo-Gothic style, which the city leaders were not in favor of that. So the architect and designer was really mad about it and supposedly put a curse on this bridge. So you'll see like gargoyles, and there's like a skull and a dagger, and it's much photographed, and we couldn't resist. We had to go there.
You know, we could make a whole thing of like, if you go under that bridge, you have to go drink twice out of the place that makes you love Barcelona. So a lot of myth and lore throughout the town.
Yeah, but it was cool. Again, we'll share lots of links in the description for you, including our full Airbnb tour, in case you haven't checked that out.
As we pan through some of the city streetscapes, we are closing in on the end of the tour, but we still had more to go.
Yeah, so at this point, they have these 2 buildings facing each other, and one is for the Barcelona government and the other is for the government of Catalonia. So that was quite interesting because they're each flying their own flag and facing each other with their own guards there.
Yeah, it was very cool, and to me it's just fascinating, the history.
So now we go to King's Square, which was sort of the last spot of the tour, and this had quite the story about like Queen Isabella and that whole beginning of that whole era. And we just loved this wooden ceiling.
Yes.
And actually it ends like sort of behind the historical museum of Barcelona.
So we were 15-20 minutes away from our Airbnb, so the end of the day, how many steps did we do?
19,000.
We were hungry. Trust me, we were very hungry.
Yeah, so we looked at a few places and settled on this spot, and we ate out and on a table on the street, and that was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah, I thought the food was okay. It wasn't amazing, but the ambiance and the people watching kind of gave it that extra star. So I enjoyed it.
Yeah. So we photographed and filmed the menus for you because we know you may be interested in that. And then, we headed back to the Airbnb and got our sleep because we had a whole full day the next day.
we covered more ground, but we just didn't walk. We decided to use the bus. So you got to stay tuned for that.
Yeah, we visit a lot more sites on day 2. So we will share all of that footage with you because, of course, you know we filmed it for you. So stay tuned. Let us know if you have any questions. And yeah, thanks for watching.
Yeah. Take care.